What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone's having a lovely Friday today. Originally for today's video I had planned I was going to take this thing out on some trails and take the scenic route and kind of make a riding montage, but as you can probably hear and see, it's been raining for the past 2 days. So for today's video I'm going to go over the best things that you can do to this bike for free to set it up better for you, and also just kind of like a setup guide and tuning technique stuff that you can do to the bike to make it handle and ride better for you, and also keep you out there riding longer and out of the shop. So let's get into it. So the first thing that you can change up for free, when they ship you these bikes out of the box, they have the front brake cable routed on the outside of the fork leg here, and that's just a recipe for disaster. If you're riding through brush or the trails and you got your brake cable on the edge of your fork guard right there, if you clip it on a branch or a bush or something, it's going to rip it right off, and then who knows, you're going to have a leak and a mess, and you got to do all your whole brake system. And like see on the motocross bikes, they route them on the inside, and they also have this holder here to keep it in place, so when your suspension compresses it goes up through the guide and not into your spokes. So if you do this, if you do reroute your caliper to the other side of the fork and you route your brake line on the inside, make sure you put a zip tie here on the cable and make sure you get it really tight. You want to get some needle noses on the zip tie there and just pull it really tight and make sure you have that cable in there fixed firm, so that way when your suspension compresses it doesn't clown up and go into your spokes, it just goes up the guide. The next thing I did that you can also do for free, the stock cable guide that comes on the bike is trash. It's too narrow, and I noticed the first day that I was riding, when my suspension would compress, it wasn't allowing the cable to freely slide up and down in the stock guide. So what you can do, and what I did here, just get a zip tie, take the cable out of the stock guide, screw it back tight, and then take a zip tie and put it around the stock guide, and then take another zip tie and put it through that one, and you can make a big hoop like this. It's got plenty of space. See over here, these bikes are fairly large, and the size that they came stock with this bike is it was just way too small, and my cable was binding up in there, and that could have been a bad issue if I didn't fix it. So a couple of zip ties, you can make you a wider cable guide. Problem solved. Next thing you can do for free is just do some cable management on the bars, tidy it up. I've got some zip ties here, just routing everything nice and clean. If you're not going to run the brake sensors, you might as well just disconnect them and take them out, and then trace those wires back into the battery box and just tie them up real clean. But do note, if you do go to take your brake sensors out, it's just this little there's just a little nut right there that you can get a wrench on, but there is an Allen set screw on the bottom, so don't do the same thing that I did and fight it the whole way out before you realize on the other one that there's a set screw on the bottom. So the next thing I did after I traced the brake sensors back and took those off, I took my tip sensor off, and that's located right here behind the controller. I also deleted my kickstand sensor, which is right there under the peg. If you are going to delete these, I do recommend the connections where you unplug them inside. Just go ahead and wrap them with some electrical tape to keep water and corrosion out of there. Next thing that you can do for pretty much free is bypass your start button. I have a video on my channel on how to do that. I'll put a link in the description below if that's something that you're interested in. Just basically so where you turn the key, you can go. Another thing on the handlebars, when I got the bike out of the box, the throttle assembly was loose enough to where if I went full throttle all the way to the stop, I could move it, and over time I moved this thing to where the start button was basically all the way underneath the handlebars down here. So what you want to do, and to keep proper riding posture, you want to kind of get this as far forward as you can. That way when you grip the throttle and you're giving it full throttle, your wrist can stop here and you're not all the way here with poor riding posture and technique. So pretty far up, get it to where if you come down, that's full throttle right there. Also, another thing on the handlebars is I scooted the levers over a little bit. You know, rider preference, whatever you want, up or down, but good rule of thumb is you want to get your finger right in the meat of the lever there. Like where they come stock, you're kind of over here, so just right in the meat of the lever, that's where you want your fingers to go, right there. Another thing you can do for free, which I did, is the Talaria Boys seat mod. Now, I didn't go quite as extreme as they did with it, and I also didn't have to go to the hardware store to get any of those parts. I'll try to clip in the part of the video to kind of give you a visual of how I did it, but where they go on the top and they take out the top two bolts, or the top 2 nuts on the top bolts, they go ahead and screw those nuts down on the bolts, and they say they use those as initial spacers. I just went ahead and put it back together after that. You can take 1 bolt from the front and put it there and put 1 bolt on the back if you want. That's the free option. I don't recommend doing that. So if you have a couple extra of those nuts sitting around that are the same size, luckily I did. I screwed the factory nuts down all the way on the posts and then reinstalled the seat and put two new nuts on the bottom. And it does help it a little bit with the seat angle. As you can see, it lifts it up a little bit, but not too extreme. Another free modification you can do to the foot pegs is file them down. You can actually, it's tedious and it takes a bunch of time, but you can file these down and get the teeth much sharper on the pegs. Granted, it's not going to make them any wider, but if you're short on money and you want sharper pegs, you can just take a file to them and get what you want. I am not going to do this. I found a set of these for 26 bucks on Amazon, and once I confirm that they fit, I'll put a link in the description, because the last pair of pegs that I ordered off Amazon did not fit when they said they would. So another thing you can do to the bike that's completely free is to mess with the suspension tuning and clickers. I've also got a video out about suspension tuning on these bikes, kind of the basics and a rundown of where to start if you want to adjust your suspension. I'll put a link for that down in the description of this video as well. Next thing that can improve your ride, depending on what you're doing, is your tire pressure. I believe the manual recommends a max pressure of 35 psi, which is what I would run if I was riding it only on the street. But as soon as I go off-road, I drop it down to 15, because when you get on the trails or you get in dirt and you go trying to ride with 35 psi in your tires, you're going to be slipping around like you're on ice and not knowing what the hell's going on. So I drop it down to 15, and I ride on the street with that and on the trails, and I haven't had any issues yet. The only reason I haven't gone below 15 on the trails yet is because these tires don't really have much of a sidewall to support them, so 15 is probably as low as I'm going to go for off-road right now. Another thing I learned about these bikes is the chain adjustment. So typically on a motocross bike, the rule of thumb is like 3 fingers behind the chain guide. That's how much slack you want to have, and that's because usually the front drive is not perfectly in line with the swing arm, so when the suspension travels up and down, you kind of need the extra slack to accommodate with the rear wheel and how it moves. But a buddy of mine on Blood, Sweat, and Gears YouTube channel made a good point. This chain is perfectly in line with the primary drive in the rear sprocket and the swing arm, so it all pivots as one together. It's not going to change, so you can have this chain pretty tight. You don't need typically as much slack as you would in a motocross bike, so if that's how you've been adjusting your chain, you don't have to do that anymore. You can run them pretty tight. Alright, moving on to the battery. The next thing you can do to this bike for free, if you've got a little bit of foam sitting around at the house, I just took a little thin sheet of this white foam here. I put a sheet of it on the bottom of the battery as well as the top. Now, when I close the battery lid, it's a little snug, but that battery doesn't move. It's not too snug. You don't want it to be super hard to close to where you can't even barely shut your battery door, or you gotta, can't even unlock it, but that does help, and I haven't heard the battery rattling around at all afterwards. So that's pretty much it for this one off the top of my head, as far as the things that you can do to the bike for free that'll help it ride better, keep you out there on the trails longer, and keep you out of the garage and the shop working on it. If this video helped you guys out in any way, please go ahead and drop it a like. I would greatly appreciate it. And again, if you're not subscribed, make sure you do so. The Surron battery, the Surron X controller, and charger are all here. I'm just looking to get my hands on a stock Surron motor. So if you've got one that you want to let go of for the right price, let me know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe, because I got a lot of plans coming up with that. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to put it in just yet, but I will give you a hint, and it's not a bike. Again, thank y'all for watching. Hope you're having a good Friday. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.